And welcome to the new episode of Fullfunnel Live. As always, this is Thursday, 4 p.m. Central European Time, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And we're going live as you with our community. So today, as promised, we're going to chat about how to create a cross-functional content creation team. So we recently got a lot of questions, and obviously these questions initially they're coming from our clients. And this is all about how to combine and make sure that three core teams work together on creating top-notch industry content, right? And three teams I refer to is marketing, sales, and subject matter experts, because in many verticals, SMEs would be people who don't belong to marketing and sales, right? And today, I would be mostly interviewing Stafford because he was in charge recently, and this is what we want to share with you guys. Recently, we were working with big enterprise company with quite a big marketing, sales, and content teams, right? And for them, it was super hard to make this workflow work, make a good structured process. So we'll use this as an example. We'll demonstrate you some workflows that we have established, right? And that might inspire you. And obviously, if it worked for a bigger team, it will definitely work in smaller teams. So hope this example will inspire you. And as always, feel free to ask any questions. You can join us live. And before we'll start, let us know, guys, where you're joining us from. Share in the chat where you are tuning in. Curious.
I'm in Ghent like usual, and it's very rainy here. Like last week it was super warm, and now it's like, so I just went to get a package and my shorts are still wet. I should have probably
basically came from the south. I'm sitting now in Spain, so it was raining here last week, so it's probably going towards your direction. Kare, Austin, Bora, Istanbul, Yankee, India, Yulia, Montenegro, Jigar, India, Yash, India. Cool. Good to see you guys. And as I said, so feel free to ask any questions. You can turn your camera on and join the conversation as well. But that being said, let's move forward. And I believe what could be a good question to start with is chat about what are the content creation bottlenecks teams are facing. I would ask you, Stafford, just think about the recent projects, right? Because you worked with both with small teams, with bigger teams, and I think the patterns are the same. What are the bottlenecks you see in the content creation process?
Yeah, so there are a couple recurring ones, and really any one of these can pretty much put a halt to the whole content creation process. I think one. I'll just start with the ones that I think is easiest to fix. Is that people oftentimes they don't know what to talk about. I mean, I'd say it's easy to fix, but it also takes quite a bit of strategy. But I think the first thing there that should happen is a demand generation calendar should be made so that people know when are we going to work on what, which events are we going to be we're going to be attending, what other kind of industry events we should be take care of, which campaigns are running, and how does that connect with the other content. So just making a simple calendar of when are we talking about what, I think that already overcomes a really big bottleneck, which is like, I don't know what to talk about. A second part of that same one of not knowing what to talk about is that most companies have no idea what it is actually that their target accounts want to learn about. So they know everything about their own product or a lot about their own product, but oftentimes that can create a little bit of a blind spot, because what you really should be thinking about is what are the use cases that my target audience have? What are the problems that they run into on a day-to-day basis in their job, and how does that connect to my product? And to give this kind of relevant information. just identifying those topics, that is also a huge bottleneck. And for that, I think the first step should be to map out the buyer journey. And I really like just to think of starting with the big picture goals. Then what are like the short-term challenges or the triggers? What is happening inside the company? What would they be researching in terms of solutions? And then how would they compare vendors? I think if you just map that out in a little bit of a flow chart, that already helps a lot with that bottleneck. So those are kind of like the marketing, let's say marketing strategy bottlenecks. But then the other bottleneck, which I think is super, super common, is that the people making the content are not the same people that have the expertise. So the subject matter expertise, they're doing their jobs, right? Let's say an enterprise SaaS, that might be like a developer or a product owner or something like that. So they're working, but they're not responsible for content. And then you have a separate marketer or a separate content team, and people expect them to write like super interesting content. But the thing is, they don't know so much about the product or about the industries, right? There are some, but I don't know that many marketers that are also, for example, engineers. There are some, but most of us are not. And so that means that even if you have read like 50 books about copywriting, and you've read our post about how to make a perfect LinkedIn post, or I remember, you must remember this too, Andre, back in the day, Josh Fester, he had this copywriting Bible, like 110 templates on how to make random anecdotes from your day into the viral LinkedIn posts, which somehow was going to drive revenue. Anyway, so you can read every single thing about copywriting that you can, but that will not enable you to make expert content, right? It could help you maybe to know enough so you can write like an SEO, like a generic SEO article, or like a generic post that basically could be written by ChatGPT or that little AI function that you have in LinkedIn now. But the reason that the AI can make it is because everybody already knows it, right? Because that's all it does. Is AI. It just summarizes all the knowledge that's already there. But if you want to make content that really impacts the buyer journey, you need to be able to go one level deeper and be more specific about your advice, right? So, and the people that have that knowledge are a totally separate set of people from the people that are making the content, and that becomes a really big issue. And so actually, I made like pretty much the ugliest graph I've ever made in my life, but I will show it to you because I made it like 5 minutes ago. But I will show it with you guys anyway. Guys and girls.
Is it better than my LinkedIn drawings?
I'm probably less viral. So this is like a really super simple chart I made for involving SMEs. And you know what? So before I joined Fullfunnel, I was in a digital product studio. So there I was in the situation that I wasn't the subject matter expert. And before that, I was doing content creation as an agency. So I've had a lot of time to try and figure this out. Like was that like 8 years now that I've been trying to figure this out? And these 3 points is what I've come up with. So the first point is, I think it's really valuable to have what I call an SME community, which is basically a group chat where you have every type of SME within your company together. So if let's say, I like the example of an enterprise SaaS, if you could have one engineer there, one product owner, somebody from customer success, somebody from sales, and maybe I think those would be the main type, whatever the operational profiles are in your company, and you just put them together in a group chat. Then you can oftentimes just ask them really quick questions after you've already identified a topic, right? So for example, you heard from sales that a specific account has some kind of a challenge and you want to make some content about it. Well, you could try to book an interview, but that's not always so easy. So instead, you can just put something in the group chat. And my best tip there is to just write something super wrong, because then everybody in the group chat will be super excited to correct you. Like, this might sound like a stupid trick, but if you just ask a question, let's be honest, there's a good chance that a lot of the people in that chat are just going to ignore you, right? They have their own job. But if you write something wrong, they just cannot help themselves but to correct it. So that sounds like a stupid tip, but I've actually tried that a lot of times. That works a lot. But my point is, if you have one of each, thanks, Julia. So if you have one of each profile there, it's easy to just write like, hey, Julia, I just had this question. I'm thinking this. What do you think about this? Right? And you just, does anybody have an example about this? And it just makes the flow of getting information much faster rather than having to set up a meeting. So that works really well. The other thing that I really believe in is to set up recurring calls with subject matter experts. And I figured that out when I was running my agency, and we were trying to make content for them, and it ended up being really well written but super generic content in the beginning of my agency. And then what we started to do is we started to set up weekly calls with the founder of the clients, and we would just interview them, and we would use an interview framework that I will share with you later on. And it just allows you to give them a topic, a specific topic. You ask them some questions about it. I'll show you the framework later. And then you just write down everything that you're learning from them. And then you turn that into a post later on, right? So it's an interview with an SME. Now, the issue is that so in those cases, it would be the founder that was basically reached out to us. So they would be very excited about being part of these calls. But in many people's cases, the SME is somebody that doesn't know you. They don't care about marketing. Sometimes they might even be skeptical about marketing. And there's no way that they're going to put aside 1 hour or a half an hour even every week. So what I like to do is I like to gather as many SMEs as possible and then just make it so that I'm doing one call a week, but every time with a different SME. So if I had, let's say, 4 subject matter experts, I would set up a monthly recurring call with each expert. So from their perspective, they're only doing one call a month, and they're probably not going to be too bothered by that, right? So they talk to you a half an hour every month, that's fine. But on your end, you actually get to have one call with an SME every single week. And usually out of one call, you can get 2 really in-depth, high-quality pieces of content. And then if you write something and you send it over for them to proofread, usually you get a little bit of extra context, right? And if you have 8 SMEs, they only have to talk to you once every 2 months. So that's also a super valuable way of thinking about it. Also, if you can convince the senior leadership to make content creation a part of their responsibility, and also make them have targets in turn about how much content they should make, that's a really good scenario for you, but you're likely not making so many friends. But I've seen that work as well, where senior leadership would set a target for the engineering chapter to do 1 article, I think every 2 weeks, or 1 article every month. And then we have like 8 engineers. So basically every engineer has to write 1.5 articles per year. You have 1 in-depth article, which you can turn into 2 or 3 posts. So that is also a good one, but you have to be careful because people can get a little bit pissed off about that one. But I do think it's a valuable way of thinking about it. A really important tip for any of these, for especially the last one, is you don't want to give too much feedback. You just want to accept what they give you and improve it and be extremely thankful. As soon as you start to give SMEs feedback about their content, they're going to be like, why am I even doing this? Why would I help you? You're not even grateful, blah, blah, blah. So my tip is don't give too much feedback. Just say, thank you, that's great, I love it. And then just adjust whatever you need to adjust. And it's the same with those recurring calls. You just have to treat them as if it's a huge favor that they're doing you to be on the call. You have to show that you appreciate their expertise. Everything that they say is basically a gift from God, and that will make everybody happy to be on those calls. And then after you use the content, share it back in a public Slack channel or public Teams channel, and you just write, look at this amazing post that Julia helped me write. We had this and this account engaging with it, and it's all thanks to Julia. Julia's going to be super happy. She's going to be super happy to help you again. And other SMEs are like, well, I could also help, right? So we have to think a little bit out of the box, because the KPIs of these people have absolutely nothing to do with our KPIs. So we have to use every trick in the book to make it so that a tempting thing for them to do and to make it so that they have a good time, right? So yeah, does anybody have any questions about this?
And these are golden points. I believe we touched the human psychology, right? Quite often when I receive a question about alignment, usually it's about marketing and sales alignment, right? But one of the things is the operations when you have structured meetings, agenda, right? The things you need to agree on, like GTM fundamentals, playbooks, etc. But the second one is psychology, right? It's literally if people are not aligned on the common goal, right? So then for SMEs it would be okay. So why should I contribute to it, right? So what's the point here? So if in your organization you don't have a collaboration culture, right? Where usually people try to help each other, right? And everybody understands that even if we have, let's say, non-sales, non-revenue departments like engineering or whatever, logistics, procurement, right? But they exist just because the company produces the revenue, right? Otherwise, the company would be closed.
But they about that.
Yeah. But I mean that we need to establish this collaborative mindset, and that's why these were perfect examples how you need to kind of incentivize these people, right, to collaborate with you and share post feedback. Okay, we did that. We generated these let's say outcomes, whatever it could be in terms of account engagement, inbound opportunities, doesn't really matter, right? And that's essential, so it motivates people to collaborate and contribute more. And I think what before we'll move to that one, I would love to emphasize on one more thing. You mentioned a few bottlenecks. I see one more. One more is basically incorporating B2C mindset, and this is one of the biggest bottlenecks. So this bottleneck is tightly aligned with the siloed functions, right? Usually content function is as well working in silos, right? So sales working in silos, marketing working in silos, and content working in silos. And this is aligned with the point that you made, right? So people are not aware of the marketing plan, of the activities that marketing and sales have already scheduled. And this is insane, right? So team is working on specific activities, and content team produces the content that is not aligned with these activities at all. But what is getting worse here is that these teams, they usually, if they work in silos, they incorporate this B2C mindset, which stands for, okay, we need to produce more content, volume-based approach, right? And we just need to focus more on specific keywords density. And that's a huge problem. In B2C, I'm against this, but for some niches, right, that could provide some traffic. And if you operate in a commodity space, that could be a good way to generate that traffic, right? And then some chunk of that traffic would be converted into customers. But in complex B2B, no way that you'll generate any opportunities. So you could be ranking for specific keywords, right? But then I'm always given two questions to think about, right? So what is the time spent on the page by your target accounts, right? And you can easily install solutions like Albacross, Lead Feeder, Clearbit, ZoomInfo, whatever, right? To see the content consumption by target accounts, not just the insights from Google Analytics, right? But even from Google Analytics, it would be good to look at the time spent on a specific blog post. That's the first one. And the second one is how often these pieces of content are being shared by champions, right, in their internal Slack channels. For me, these are two essential things to look when I'm evaluating the quality of the content. So for us at Fullfunnel, the benchmark is that target accounts should spend at least 8 minutes on every single blog post that we produce. And that's why we don't have a lot of posts on our blog, but most of them are ranking high in Google. Now, I'm not saying that we're on the first pages, etc., obviously no, but we're on the second, third page. We are not working actively on search engine optimization, but the time spent usually, so for example, ABM strategy guide, average time spent is almost 15 minutes. That means to me that this is a content that resonates with the target audience, right? That's essential. And the second feedback I'm looking whenever I'm engaging with people on LinkedIn, and I know that, for example, somebody checked a specific piece of content I'm asking, and they say, yeah, I have shared it with my team in Slack and Teams, etc. This is exactly what we are looking for, not for the random traffic that will never be converted into sales opportunities. I believe that's a huge mistake and huge bottleneck that a lot of teams are facing. But coming back to our process, let's talk about the ways how to solve these bottlenecks. Let's talk about the process.
Yeah. Well, one thing also about the B2B, B2C mindset, as I was actually talking with one of the clients this morning, and they were talking about a specific post, and we're like, oh, the post only had, it was like really low. It was like the post only had 3 likes. And I was like, okay, so I go look at the post, and it has 3 likes and 1 repost. And the repost was made by the target account. So it was a post about the target account, and the target account had reposted it. Who cares about how many likes you have on that post when the actual company page of the target account has shared our content, right? So we have to really think about how we look at this content and how we want to analyze the results. So about the bottlenecks, so I really like this interview framework that I was talking about before. So this is when you're talking to the SMEs, because so I'll tell you some funny anecdotes. I remember when I was interviewing our founders at my agency back in the day, and I remember I had this one call and I forgot to record it. And so he was telling me this great story. I don't remember what it was about, but it was like, oh, and yes, and when I was working in Canada, then this happened, and then that happened, and this happened. And I was like, oh, great, this is gold. I'm going to be able to write the best post ever. And then I sat behind my computer afterwards, and I was like, okay, so this guy was in Canada, but what did that have to do again with the challenge of the target audience, and what was it exactly that happened? And so I just noticed that I lacked the ammunition to write a full-fledged post. And that's when I implemented this interview framework. And basically, if you ask the questions in these categories, you will always have enough information to write a full post. So I recommend when you interview the SME, you know beforehand what you want to talk about. Usually I want to have 2 posts out of them. First, something I want to talk about, and second, something they're excited about. Because what they're excited about oftentimes has a good relationship with the needs of the customer. But in both cases, I will ask them, what was the original challenge that triggered this insight? Why is that a problem? What are the obstacles that need to be overcome in order to solve it? What are the steps of the solution? What is your main lesson? And give me as many personal examples and anecdotes as you can. And if you ask those things during the interview, you will pretty much always get all the information that you need. And this can really save you a lot of time. And it's really embarrassing if you have to call them back, like, oh, I didn't catch everything. So I think that was good. I see we have a question. So Kari wrote, we have internal SMEs and will determine which one of our content writer to interview based on the topics. Perfect. And then we have our biggest bottleneck is getting final approval from our CEO, who needs to review every piece for accuracy, but he only has 1 hour a week to review a content piece. It slows down our process quite a bit. Yes, that can be a really big bottleneck.
It's a micromanagement issue and lack of trust. So in this case, I can give only one recommendation, right? So start posting from your profiles. Quite often even if it sounds controversial, but we often explain to the marketing team, let's say if a company has sales-led mindset, right? Or lead generation mindset, if it it's even worse, right? So sales won't buy in demand generation program, thought leadership, all of that stuff, right? Because they think in a transactional way. And the same with micromanagement. Good idea would be starting a side project. So I obviously it's up to you to do this, but I'm just sharing my own experience, right? So you start doing everything from your profile, and nobody would ever tell you, because that's your personal asset, right? Nobody would ever tell you, okay, so you need to, you need to rephrase this post, or you need to structure it differently, right? You are allowed to post whatever you want in your profile, and then you can simply collect the stats and present the data, right? Do all the engagement. I mean, now we're just talking about the content part, but you can proceed with other engagements, right? And then present everything and say, hey, so I was running this experiment for the last 2, 3, 4 weeks. Here is the data. And what is good about LinkedIn, that nowadays you can collect really good data to convince people, right? So you can show the geographical distribution of that post, so countries, right, and cities by reach, then the job roles by reach, verticals by reach, which is quite good, right? And obviously you can collect the engagement from people saying, hey, so target accounts engaged with that post. I had conversations in my inbox, talking to these people, and they provided this feedback. So in this case, it's usually enough, but that would be the way. And I also would highly recommend a lot of companies, especially smaller companies. I see this bottleneck quite often. They say, okay, so we want to put our CEO or somebody who wears C-suit hat, right? We want to put them in front of our target audience, and these people are scared because they usually scared what their network would say, right? So they are scared to get the feedback, right? And then so I want to review, I want to rephrase, I want to polish. So if this is a bottleneck, then I would definitely recommend you to skip profiles of your founders and leverage anybody else's profile, sales, marketing, whoever, and just do the same activities, right? And quite often I would touch another point, because there is like a question that comes as a consequence, right? But what if I don't have target network, right? That's a bad excuse, because you can build it really fast. And the easiest way, you can just simply look at the network of your founder, of your CEO, right? And just start connecting to these people saying, hey, I joined this company and I started to, publish content about this and that. So just would love to, so that you're connected to my CEO, would love to stay connected, right? And then you get the same opportunity to nurture that audience, right?
Yeah. I think that's a great answer, to be honest. We also had a question from Bora. If you're working with SMEs outside of your company, what would be your recommendation in reaching out and convincing them to contribute? So I think the obvious one there is to focus on content collaboration, rather than so you wouldn't make it so, oh, let me interview you so I can write a LinkedIn post, but you would say something like, hey, do you want to be on my podcast? And then interview them during the podcast, and then turn the insights from the podcast into separate posts, and you also have clips from the podcast. It's a great way also to build relationships with the SMEs. You can also invite them to be basically part of your article. If you're doing a guest post, you can also do market research. The other option would also just be to pay them, right? If that is within your budget, you can pay them for your time. Or actually many SMEs are just happy to have a free tool, for example. So depending on what your product is, you can give them a free subscription. I think many people would also be down for that. I think those are good options. What do you think, Andre?
You nailed it down. We also had a good example earlier this year during our Fullfunnel Summit. Liam from Cognism, he presented the framework, how they collaborate with influencers, right? And basically a lot of content being produced by the external SMEs. Obviously, then you need to have a specific program and the program owner and the budget to do this. But that's another way. And you know what is really ridiculous? A lot of people say that we don't have budget for this. But then I'm saying, can you please share with me how your budget is structured? And they say, hey, so we pay search engine optimization agency, we pay performance marketing agency, we pay for ads. And then I'm saying, like, have you ever analyzed the conversion from this? But that's completely different story, right? Where I'm going with this, that it's just a matter of a few minutes to analyze where you waste budget. And believe me, we have done hundreds of audits that could be defined really, really fast. And then you can simply take this budget and invest into something that makes perfect sense.
Like if you would go to the Fullfunnel website and you look at the ICP article, you cannot put a price.
That's your favorite.
That's my favorite. But you cannot put a price on the value that article has brought to Fullfunnel, right? Like you could never basically pay enough for an article like that. Like that is just had so much impact across the industry, really. That I mean, if you would see an opportunity to get that level of content, basically you should free up budget for something like that. Like I don't think we could ever really measure the impact that article has had on the company. We also, and then Julia, she responded about the earlier question. So Julia, she asked about the external she asked about something else first. Yeah, so Julia, she said that her main bottleneck, or his or her main bottleneck, is that that they're the founder and they're their own SME, or they're their own SME, and they have 1,000 other things to do. And my proposed solution was to get somebody to interview you, and they said that this actually ended up costing more time because we had to double check everything. We had to approve everything, and it was more work. In my opinion, that can happen. In my experience, I've seen that happen, but it's always been solved by getting a better writer. And a better writer in this case would not mean necessarily somebody that has better writing skills, but somebody whose expertise aligns more closely to your own. So I would rather have an okay writer that has a good idea about the industry, and then you're just explaining them just the finer details, rather than a great writer that has no clue about your company. So I would try to find an okay writer that has a lot of expertise.
But to be honest, I would think that even in this case, it won't help. And it won't help because of the reason that was already mentioned, right? Thousands of different things. It's lack of prioritization. I have seen this with multiple companies, and it's interesting because content creation belongs to this, right? It's what you pay attention to, what you are prioritizing, what you are focusing on. I know a lot of companies where marketing team is not really big, and they try to run, like, let's say 20, 25 different programs and try to do different tactics, etc. And then it's exactly the issue, right? Doing thousands of different things. But they are not good in any of them. They do, like, if you review any program, every program is mediocre, right? It could be 10, 15, 20 times done better if they would just simply focus more on it. The simple example, I mean, one of the recent projects, company runs retargeting, then they complain that retargeting, I mean, the retargeting layer doesn't work really well. I attend their website, and our company, right, my profile doesn't fit their ideal customer profile, but I start seeing a lot of their ads. So, and that's the simple example, right? Retargeting wrong audience, spending money on the audience that will never convert, right? That's one of the examples. So where I'm going with this, it's always better to stop, pause for a second, take a sober look on all of activities that you are running, and then saying, okay, these are the activities that we're really not doing well. These are activities that we're also not doing well, but at least they contribute to revenue, right, to our pipeline. So maybe should I focus on 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 core activities and excel at these activities and do them better than our competition, right? And then think how to do everything else. And then if you'll do it that way, and despite the fact we want this or no, content should be a part of this. Unfortunately, in B2B content, there's one or content creation, and top-notch content creation is one of the key pillars in demand generation programs, right? So we should prioritize it. So in that case, if you would prioritize it and then hire a good writer, then you'll see a fantastic ROI, right? But if you won't prioritize it and hire a good writer, it would create more frustration, because a good writer will never work for a company with mediocre processes. It's just a matter of time when this person would say, what am I supposed to do here, right? If these people don't have time for me, or if they are reviewing every single word that I'm putting out, right? If I'm getting a bunch of feedback, etc., etc. So that's my point. So good people help to improve good processes, right? But good people can't help with mediocre processes. I mean, good people who are in charge of execution.
That's good advice. We have another question from you.
Let's come back to the process. Just make sure that we cover the process, and then we can cover the rest.
Yeah. So what I would like to show is this workflow that I've made. It's in Notion. I can show you a little bit about how it works, but we're not going to share the template, I think. But so one of the things, another bottleneck that we didn't mention, but that is very real, is honestly a lack of a process, right? So oftentimes a content process works well when you have your first initial person that is good at making content, and they do it for their own profile, and they're just doing it day by day, right? For example, like Andre and Vladimir, they've been making content for Fullfunnel for years, and they have their system. They write their content in the morning, or I don't know actually when they do it, but they write their content, and that works well. But then when you go into an enterprise organization, actually you need to have more people that need to come together, right? Like we talked about, we have the SMEs that need to basically give the actual content of the content. We have sales that usually has their finger on the pulse about what is relevant right now. And then we have content and marketing that needs to create the content. And there's no real good way usually to bring them together. And that's why we built this workflow that has like 10 steps basically. So the first step is the demand generation calendar, right? We talked about that before. And basically what we're going to do here is fill in the events, the webinars, the LinkedIn posts, the newsletters, the articles, and the case studies that we're going to release over the next 6 months, let's say. And we will use that in order to plan our smaller content around it, like, right? If we're gonna do, and also if you're gonna launch a new program, for example, for Fullfunnel, we have the bootcamps, for example, that we work towards. If we're gonna do an ABM bootcamp, it makes sense for us to do ABM articles and ABM LinkedIn posts, right? So we want to just make sure that we're oriented in time. And then we want to have a good system of gathering ideas, right? So we're going to have a central database where everybody that's part of the content workflow can write down their ideas. And if people don't want to work in this database, you can ask them to just DM you with whatever ideas they have. You can also make your map of informational needs and your buyer journey and put all of the things that come out of that here as ideas, right? So I just now got to write article about content creation operations, right? So I can write that. Can write down where I can have some references. What is it going to be? It's going to be, let's say, the how-to posts. And now it's an idea, and I'm always working on gathering ideas. We can do idea gathering in the flow of work, right? So whenever an idea comes up, I'm talking to a client, etc., I can add it there. Or I can have brainstorm sessions in my weekly content planning or bi-weekly content planning session, which I think it's a session that you should have with everybody involved in content, or at least the people that are going to be creating the content. So the next thing is to plan the content that you want to post the coming week according to slots. So when you're working with personal profiles, I think every profile should have set slots of which content should be made when, right? So which post type. So maybe on Monday we repost, on Wednesday we do a new post based on interview, on Thursday we share some news, and on Friday we repost old posts, something like that. And now we know which posts that we need to do in a weekly basis, and the whole team knows which slots are we working towards. So you could also include your website or your YouTube channel or whatever. You just need to know what your slots are that you have to fill every week. And then you start taking your content ideas and matching them to these slots so that you have, so that you can start planning, right? So for example, here I can put this as a next up, and I'm gonna put the date as, let's say Monday, and then it will show up. Now it showed up in the content that we have to work on this week. Then obviously somebody has to write the content, and if an interview is needed, that should be done for the content that we have planned out. If content needs to be approved, that is a fourth step. And if that is the case, we want to always create content with a lag time of 1 week. So if I know it's going to take the CEO 1 week to approve my content, if I want to make content for next week, that content should have already been sent to the CEO. So we have a lag time of 1 week if we're working as a team. Then when it's posted, on the day it's posted, you should make sure that we're engaging, but also make sure that everybody in the company is engaging on the content, so the most people possible people see it. And also I think it's relevant to do one-to-one distribution with target accounts if your content is relevant for them. Then we have to follow up after the content. So we have to follow up with the engagers, DM the ICPs, respond to comments, etc. That is the 7th step of the process. Then the 8th step of the process is to actually gather all the results in terms of view, likes, comments, etc. Which companies have been looking at it. And then step 9 is we pick the best performing content and we flag it as repostable content. And then that in this template would actually show up under post IDs, I think. So we are actually creating a database of content that we should repost. But this is only in this template. But no matter how you're going to do this, 2 weeks after posting the content, you should look at the results and mark if it was a success or not. And if it was, it should go in a database of content that you will repurpose later on. So this is basically the process that I recommend.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So a question from Diana about the templates. It's kind of, it's not template in a way, so these are not the Google Sheets, but this like kind of database that we have created that has connections to multiple databases. So it's not that easy to share because it was made in Notion, but it led us to a good thinking that at one point we need to create a mini SaaS, probably a mini product that everybody could use. So for us, it could be a little bit difficult to share everything, but yeah, indeed, you can simply create, even in terms of demand generation calendar, right? So what Staffan was sharing, you can just create a simple spreadsheet and start mapping out this quarter, we are doing this and that. With content planning, it's literally the same, right? So content planning, post who is going to post it and when, so you don't need to have a super complicated database. And for the screenshots, it's just, we were sharing the screen, so the recording is here. The recording would be available on YouTube. So, anytime you'll need to come back, you can just make screenshots out of it. Or if you'll need a higher resolution of a specific database, right, then just ping me or Staffan and we'll share it with you. And Kara, yeah, exactly. So just tried to answer the question. So it's not that easy to share that template because it's not the template in a sense like we used to think about the template, right? It's Notion. What we love about Notion, it's indeed, right? It's kind of software that allows you to create these complex workflows that are connected to each other. So it operates as a mini SaaS product, right? So that's that's an issue with it. So it sits inside the client's hubs. But again, just feel free to ask us, and we'll make screenshots or whatever. You can easily recreate it in simple Google Sheets. It won't take a lot of time. Good. It seems that we have covered everything. So the bottlenecks, right? That was just try to summarize everything. There were a bunch of bottlenecks that we have touched: the B2C mindset, right? Micromanagement, work in silos, misalignment with the marketing and sales goals, not understanding the market and not understanding how involve SMEs, right? So we have covered this, plus the processes and the workflows and how to make this process really structured. Let us know if it was insightful. Did you get some new ideas, some new insights? Just share with us in the chat. And while you guys chatting, to give you a few insights about what we are going to cover soon. So in next episodes, next week, we won't host a live episode because we are going to run a keynote at Demand-Based event in London. So maybe we'll share a recording with everybody after. That would be a live event, and a week after we'll host a new episode, which could be kind of a mini workshop talking about digital attribution, not non-linear digital attribution. I would invite Stefan, founder of Dream Data, so we'll touch points how to measure and how to prove non-linear buyer journey and contribution of different marketing activities to revenue, right? So that would be super, super interesting. And then in October, we'll have 2 practical workshops for you guys. One would be with Chili Piper about lead routing and improving lead handover processes, and one would be with Demand-Based as well, and that would be all about developing joint playbooks. So stay tuned. A lot of comment, and good. Yulia, thanks a lot for the feedback. No magic shortcuts. Yeah, this is something that we always try to say. Yeah, it's usually marketing is not the rocket science, and it's not a growth hack, as a lot of people think, right? It's just a hard work that includes a lot of analysis, a lot of collaboration between teams, and focus and prioritization. Happy to hear that you enjoyed this session. If you guys will have a spare minute, I would appreciate a lot if you'll rate our podcast on Spotify, or maybe some would be listening to this episode on Spotify already. So if you'll click that button and give us 5 stars and provide a short feedback, that would be much appreciated. That's it. See you in 2 weeks. Wish you a great rest of the week, and do a great marketing. Cheers. Take care.
Bye, guys.